Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 9 of the MFFL Nation Show. I am your host, Mason, aka MFFL Nation, and a lot of news that we're going to be covering over this episode. To start off, firstly, Kyrie Irving will be declining his player option and signing a new 3-year, $119 million contract extension with the Dallas Mavericks with a player option in the 2027-28 season, according to Shams. Just massive news, great news. Personally, I know that a lot of Mavericks fans wanted Kyrie to opt out of his player option that he had this offseason so that he could get an extension to where he's sticking with the Dallas Mavericks for a longer amount of time. If Kyrie were have to opted in to this deal, he would have been on the Mavericks 100% this upcoming season, and then he would have been an unrestricted free agent. So for the Mavericks to be able to retain Kyrie Irving, to know that he's going to be in Dallas for at least 2 more seasons with a player option on the third is very, very nice to see. What does this exactly mean? Not only does it create more flexibility for this roster, as Shams reported that, and Bobby Marks reported that, with Kyrie taking this contract just barely under $40 million, the Mavericks now also have their tax player mid-level exception, which is worth $5.7 million, to where you can snag a point guard that the Mavericks are in need of, which we will cover later in this episode. That's just the number one thing. Secondly, Kyrie's contract specifically aligns with Anthony Davis's. Anthony Davis will also have a player option in the 27-28 season. And you look at this and you realize that they have a decent-sized commitment to the Dallas Mavericks, that Cooper Flagg is going to have Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, and Klay Thompson on his team, to where he can just really be a viewer and see what they do on the court, what they do off the court, and really learn from them as well. So there's so many huge benefits to Kyrie Irving signing this new contract extension. Obviously, it's not official until July 6th when he'll be able to sign it, but I'd say it's a 99.999% chance it ends up happening. Just very excited about this. Obviously, Kyrie probably won't be back on the court until January or February of 2026. But for the Mavericks to be able to get this commitment from Kyrie Irving, to know that he wants to stay in Dallas, is huge, not only for the Mavericks organization, but for the Mavericks fan base. You know, we look at this Mavericks team as a fan myself. After losing Luka Doncic, you look for a player that you can really root for and know that is going to carry your team through thick and thin on the court and off the court. Kyrie was probably the most well-spoken person within the Mavericks organization after the Luka trade. And to know that he's going to be with the Mavericks until 2028, probably longer, personally hope Kyrie retires a Maverick, is very refreshing. So, again, just a great deal for both sides. I think Kyrie got close to the number that he wanted, and this is a very fair number for the Dallas Mavericks. Obviously, like we said, Kyrie's not going to be back until January, maybe February, and then it's a minutes restriction as well. But this is a long-term deal, not something that you want to judge based off of the fact that he's going to be out for the first few months of the regular season, but judging it based off of what he's done for Dallas and what he will probably do for Dallas in the future. Another thing that I wanted to bring up with this is that there's been a lot of rumblings about Sham God, who is an assistant coach and plays a big role in player development, has been garnering a lot of interest from the Orlando Magic. Obviously, Magic head coach Jamal Mosley used to work on the Mavericks staff before getting that job with the Magic and has a close relationship with Sham God. I think Kyrie Irving signing this new deal indicates that there's a higher probability of Sham God wanting to stay within the Mavericks organization. Again, Marc Stein has reported multiple times that Sham God and Kyrie have a very, very close relationship. Probably the person that Kyrie is closest to within the Mavericks organization is Sham God. So this is just another win for the Mavericks. And it's going to be really exciting to see. I'm very, very happy with this deal. No complaints, zero complaints whatsoever. Great for both sides, and I'm excited to see what the Mavs end up doing in the coming years with that. Secondly, Shams had initially reported that the Dallas Mavericks would have potential interest in guys like Dennis Schroeder, Chris Paul, D'Angelo Russell, and Malcolm Brogdon. About an hour after he reported that, he said that basically the two names to keep an eye on for the Dallas Mavericks is D'Angelo Russell and Malcolm Brogdon. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to pull this up for you guys. What we're looking at here is Malcolm Brogdon's stats from the 24-25 season. Obviously averaged 12.7 points per game, 3.8 rebounds, and 4.1 assists. The obvious thing, though, is he only played in 24 games. Poor year shooting the three ball. He's averaging 4.2 attempts from behind the three-point line per season, or per game. But that season, he only shot 2.3. If you look at the years before that, in Boston, he shot the ball at a career high rate from behind the arc and then shot it fairly well for the Blazers, but only played 39 games that year. But if you look at that Boston season, that's what really sticks out. In the 2022-23 season, Brogdon played 67 games for the Celtics, played around 26 minutes per game, which I think is a very fair number. Could probably end up playing less with the Mavericks, considering that I think Brandon Williams is a legit rotation player, and I think B-Will get minutes, especially when Kyrie's healthy still. But Brogdon, who would most likely play a backup point guard role for the Mavericks, if he can shoot anywhere near 44.4% from three on 4.4 attempts, you are very interested in that. That is very intriguing to the eye. Averaged 14.9 points per game in that season, 4.2 rebounds per game, 3.7 assists. So all very nice stuff. Brogdon, solid defender, nothing too special defensively, but nothing too poor defensively either. So I think if the Mavericks want to take the risk on an injury-prone player, you take it on Brogdon. Again, you look at the numbers, he can score offensively. The field goal percentage for a guard is decently efficient. Again, looking at the mid to high 40s for most seasons. And so if the Mavericks want to take this injury risk with Brogdon, but also come to realization that the 2 years that he was mostly not playing were for teams that were trying to do well in the lottery, I think you do try to make this move. Again, the Dallas Mavericks have that $5.7 million tax player mid-level exception. So the next player we'll be looking at is D'Angelo Russell. Again, Shams said this is one of the two players to keep an eye on. I personally think that this is the more intriguing player just because of the fact that D'Lo is very familiar with a lot of people within the Mavericks organization. Again, was teammates with guys like Anthony Davis, Max Christie, even Spencer Dinwiddie, very close to Jared Dudley as well. Had a podcast episode with Jared Dudley earlier in the year, so that's something to keep an eye out for too. But D'Lo, again, the last few years have been rough for him. Can't really sugarcoat that. But I think this is someone who could fit into the Mavericks role decently well while Kyrie Irving is out, just because of how insane this Mavericks defense is. I think the Mavericks would do a really good job of hiding his poor defensive capabilities because of the fact that you're going to have PJ, Cooper Flagg, AD, and guys like Lively on the floor as well. So if you're looking for someone that can score the ball, I think you do go for D'Angelo Russell. Again, D'Lo in the last few years, I mean, he's averaging anywhere from 11 to 13 shot attempts per game. Outside of this past year with the Nets and the Lakers, he was shooting the three ball pretty efficiently. If you look at his year with Minnesota in 22-23 season, he was shooting 39% from three on 7 attempts per game. If you look at his time with the Lakers, 41.4%, and then in the 2023-24 season, 41.5% on 7.2 attempts per game. Now, D'Lo is nowhere near a special player where you're giving this guy a lot of trust come playoff time, but I do believe that if you want to rely on someone while Kyrie Irving is out, this is the right player that you could rely on to get you buckets, to somewhat facilitate the ball, and to just trust until Kyrie gets back. I think this is the safest option. I think this is going to be one of the cheapest options. I know a lot of people were interested in Dennis Schroeder. Again, either Schroeder is going to stay in Detroit, or as Marc Stein recently reported, the Sacramento Kings are very interested in that. And I don't think the Mavericks are going to be able to afford Schroeder, honestly. So realistically speaking, I think it's going to go down to DAngelo Russell or Malcolm Brogdon. It'll be interesting to see what route the Mavs take with that, because I do feel like neither of those players have too big of a market, too many teams interested in them. Again, that's just my opinion, no sources on that whatsoever. So yeah, I would personally say if you want to play the safe route, I would go DAngelo Russell just because of the injury history with Malcolm Brogdon. If you want to go based off of pure talent, I would go Malcolm Brogdon though. I do think with the Mavericks injury luck though lately, Russell is the smarter move to take on this. It was also reported recently that Daniel Gafford is going to sign a 3-year, $54 million contract extension. Why is that number so important? That number keeps him right below the amount of money a player can make to where he is still immediately tradable. Typically in these kind of contract extensions where Shams had initially said it was a 3-year, $60 million deal, if that were the case, or close to $60 million, if that were the case, the Mavericks would have had to wait 6 months to trade Daniel Gafford. Now, with the $54 million within those 3 years, Gafford is tradable right now. Marc Stein did report that the Mavericks still preferred to keep PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, and this extension wasn't just signed with the intent to trade Gafford tomorrow. The Mavericks plan on keeping Daniel Gafford, but Stein reiterated that the Mavericks will listen to an offer that contains a very good guard from a different team. If that means giving up Gafford, they would consider it. I don't think Gafford's going anywhere. Again, Dereck Lively hasn't been the healthiest. And if you trade Gafford, then you're relying on Dwight Powell or possibly Kai Jones to be the backup center, essentially the starting center if Lively, knock on wood, were to get hurt. So I don't think the Mavericks are going to move Gafford anytime soon. I think they'd rather see if Dereck Lively can stay healthy, then Gafford becomes a more tradable asset for them. But as of right now, you have Daniel Gafford on a really good deal, only making $18 million a year. I think it's safe to say that Gafford stays on this team at minimum until the trade deadline this upcoming season. But I wouldn't be shocked if he lasts the whole season, if not next season. So very excited to see that. Again, I think the Mavericks have the best 3 to 5 depth, small forward to center depth in the NBA. You look at PJ Washington, Cooper Flagg. You could throw Najee Marshall in there, Anthony Davis, Dereck Lively, Daniel Gafford. Of course, Dwight Powell, can't forget about DP. But I'm really excited about the Mavs' future. They got 2 great deals done within the last 48 hours of Kyrie Irving and Daniel Gafford. So I know we don't want to credit the front office just because of past history, but props to them. 2 very good deals that are beneficial for both sides and set up the Mavs pretty well in the long term. So very excited about that. Lastly, obviously there was the Boston Celtics, Atlanta Hawks, and Brooklyn Nets trade. With the Brooklyn Nets, they now have 5 first-round picks in the NBA draft that, when this video comes out, will be today. And do the Mavericks go try to trade Olivier Maxence Prosper or Jaden Hardy and try to get one of those first-round picks, maybe combine them both for a first-round pick and go get a young guard like a Walter Clayton Jr., an Igor Demon, or anyone like that? I do think it would be in their best interest to do so. I've given up on Jaden Hardy fully. I'm close to giving up fully on Omax Prosper. I hate to say it, but it's just the truth. I think if you can get a guard that you can pair with Cooper Flagg that he can have in the long term with his tenure in Dallas, you do it. It really comes down to the point if the Brooklyn Nets say, okay, we're willing to take a risk on one of these players and see if they can bring a spark to our team. See if it just was the wrong fit in Dallas and they'll be good for the Nets. Again, not sure if it'll end up happening, but just to recap, guys, Kyrie Irving, phenomenal deal, 3-year, $119 million, and Daniel Gafford, 3-year, $54 million. Very, very happy about both of those deals. I think it sets up the Mavericks perfectly, and I'm very excited, guys. Next time you guys see me on the MFFL Nation show, Cooper Flagg will officially be a Maverick, and we'll have a special guest on next episode. So stay tuned for that. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button down below. Sorry for the fancy setup. No mic tonight either, but currently out of town and didn't have the proper setup. So stay tuned for all of that, and I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and go Mavs.